Questions and answers. How can I stop being judgmental? I think all of us have done that time or two or three or more. So let's find out what the scriptures have to say about being judgmental. Well, we understand the Bible consistently warns against being judgmental, and it emphasizes humility, self-examination, and grace over condemnation. Now, there's a word called pause, P-A-U-S-E. Well, before reacting to others' actions, ask yourself, have you examined your own behavior? In other words, put yourself on trial before you put someone else on trial. We're to focus on love, encouragement, and restoration rather than condemning somebody. Practice forgiveness and bear with others' imperfections, remembering that we are all in need of grace. Another thing as well, you see, when you deal with somebody, you can't figure out where in the world he's coming from. You see, we cannot know where he's coming from until we know where he's been. We can't understand what somebody goes through until we have been there and seen exactly what he's dealing with. Is it a health issue? Is it an anger issue? Is it family? Is it money? Whatever it is, sometimes we need to look at who they are and where they come from before we become judgmental of their actions or their words. We're to do a self-examination first. See, the Bible urges believers to look inward before pointing at others' faults, recognizing that we all have our imperfections. Grace over condemnation. Followers of Christ are called to extend the same grace that they have received, fostering understanding and compassion. Once again, you don't know where they're coming from until you know where they've been. Humility. Humility is linked to being less judgmental, as it reminds us of our shared humanity and the need for God's mercy, and we all need that. Forgiveness, tough one for many people. Forgiveness is presented as a direct antidote to judgment, aligning with God's own character. Well, Matthew 7:1 says, "Do not judge, or you will be judged. For in the same way you judge others, you will be judged, and with the measure you use, it will be measured to you." In other words, you are going to be judged according to how you judge others. If you forgive, you'll be forgiven. If you don't forgive, I guess you understand the point. To the degree that you forgive, to the degree that you judge, you're going to be judged and forgiven yourself. Matthew 7, first 5 verses says this, "Judge not, to be not judged. Why do you see the speck that is in your brother's eye and do not notice the log that is in your own eye?" Now, this parable calls for self-awareness before being critical of others. Luke 6:37, Jesus speaking again, he says, "Judge not, you'll not be judged. Condemn not, you'll not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven." Now, how can we ask God to forgive us when we won't forgive someone else? It doesn't work that way. See, this verse links our judgment to our own need for forgiveness. Paul speaking in Romans chapter 2, verses 1 through 11, here's what it says, "You therefore have no excuse, you who pass judgment on someone else. For at whatever point you judge another, you are condemned yourself, because you who pass judgment do the same thing." Now, this passage stresses that judging others is also sin and it's hypocritical. James chapter 4, verse 12, "There is only one lawgiver and judge, the one who is able to save and destroy. But you, who are you to judge your brother?" See, this verse challenges the authority of human judgment. Well, in sum, Scripture teaches that being judgmental is not only unloving, but also self-defeating, as it risks apostasy and misses the opportunity to reflect Christ's mercy. In other words, have a heart, if you will, of forgiveness. Colossians 3:13, "Bear with each other and forgive one another if you have a grievance against one another." In other words, forgiveness is presented as the opposite of judgment. Forgiveness is presented as the very opposite of being judgmental. Jesus speaking here, John 8:7, you remember the story. This woman was caught in adultery in the very act. And so they brought her before Jesus, and they said, "This woman, according to the law, needs to be stoned. What do you say?" Well, he begins to write in the dirt, and one by one they walk away because he's telling them. Verse number 7, "Let any one of you who is without sin," in other words, if you're sinless, go ahead, throw a stone at her. Go ahead, kill her. One by one, they walked away. Now, they've debated for centuries as to what he actually wrote in the dirt when he knelt down. Well, more than likely, what he did is he wrote down the sins of the accusers. They might have done the same thing and probably far worse. So, after it's all over with, he looks at the woman and he says, "Where are your accusers?" She said, "Well, there are none." He says, "Neither do I. Go and sin no more." In other words, stop what you did. Don't do it anymore. But he gave mercy. And that's what Jesus was all about, mercy. So as we look at someone, we can't figure out exactly where they're coming from. Realize you have no idea where they've been. Forgive, and you'll be forgiven. And to the measure that you forgive, you are forgiven yourself. I hope that helps you. We'll see you on the next one.